Welcome back to another episode of Whiskey and Wine. I'm Sam,
I'm Heather.
and today we are talking about the 5 whiskeys that got us into whiskey. And I was going to say this is budget, but some of these, well, one of them specifically, is not budget anymore. Mainly because it's just hard to find. But hopefully it'll be returning to budget soon. But with that, let's just dive right in. I guess for us, whiskey is a very interesting thing because in Wisconsin, there's the Wisconsin Old Fashioned, which is not actually whiskey based. Most of the time, it's going to be brandy based. So the introduction to whiskey in general was really weird. For me, it was with a Wisconsin Old Fashioned, going to a bar and you just like, hey, do you want it sweet, sour, all of these things? I'm like, I'll take it sweet. And basically, if you don't know, the Wisconsin Old Fashioned is
So different.
yeah. So they put
And I didn't know.
fruit in the bottom of your cup. So there's oranges, and then there's the cherries that gets muddled, and then you put your bitters, sugar, the whiskey, and then you top it off with some type of soda. I think for sweet, it's usually like 7 Up or something like that. And that's what the cocktail is. So that's what I was introduced to, and the type of whiskey that I was introduced to it with was, I'm losing the name of it, but it's like the cheapest rail stuff you can find. I'll put a picture of it here if I can find it. But very interesting introduction to it. And I know yours was a little bit different because you started with the Brandy Old Fashioned.
Yes. And that's even more Wisconsin tradition. And brandy is a sweeter spirit to begin with.
So as far as the first whiskey that I was actually introduced to, that I'm like, this is a good whiskey. It's also the first one you were introduced to. Good old 1792 small batch. This one is, I don't know. I think this goes for what, like maybe $35, $40, something like that.
Just want to smell it. Yeah, that's delicious.
It's not too expensive. It does have a nice little bite to it, which is kind of nice, but it's not going to be anything too aggressive. I feel like this is a very good, basic bourbon that you can either sip neat, you can make it into a cocktail. This is basically always on our bar. We will always have this guy. Definitely hands down one of our favorites.
Yeah.
From there, I actually got introduced to Scotch next. So got to play with, I think it was Glenmorangie or Glenmorangie. Wow, slaughtered that name. Might have been it's a 10, 12, and 15. Someone got me these little sample packs of it, and I got to try those. And I don't remember, did you get to try those ones at all back
I have no recollection of this.
It was just a very basic, nice introduction. And for a Scotch, it wasn't anything like peated. It wasn't like too flavorful. It was just kind of, hey, here's what a malted whiskey tastes like instead of having a bourbon or a rye or something like that. And at this point, I don't even think I had a rye. I don't think we ever actually touched rye until we came down here.
Probably not.
The next one that we got to try was actually one from one of my friends, and we had got it when we went out to see his family in Maine. We were going on a road trip, so we bought this bottle, and it's what we basically had to drink if we were like staying up late, anything like that. That is what we had this whole trip. We didn't finish this because also this was very early in our whiskey journey, and we were like, whiskey straight, this is really tough. I think we mostly mixed it with like Dr. Pepper or something like that. This was Gentleman Jack. So I'll post that here too. And this one is pretty light. I know you weren't a fan of it as much.
Blocked it out. I don't even remember.
We recently found out that we don't really enjoy Tennessee whiskey that much because a lot of Tennessee whiskey has that banana runts kind of flavor to it. And we kept trying a couple more of them, and so far haven't found a Tennessee whiskey that we actually enjoy.
I appreciate that it is a thing. It's just not my thing.
One of the other whiskeys that I had found, and this was extremely funny how this happened. So in Wisconsin, most Wisconsin like liquor stores don't stock the weird bourbons, you could say. And there was one, I'm gonna slaughter the name again, but it's like Clogan is how it's pronounced, I think. But it's this one, and I think the one I specifically had was the mesquite smoke one. because it was this super smoky whiskey and it was super confusing to me. I didn't understand it. I bought it because it was on sale, but it introduced me to smoke. And I'm like, what is this? This is super weird. I've never had a smoky drink before. And having a cheaper smoked whiskey of some sort, whether it's going to be peat smoked, mesquite, whatever it is, it's a nice thing to be able to have. So if you are trying to get into the world of whiskey, one of the things I recommend you should try is like an Isla whiskey, something that's cheaper, or just find like a mesquite smoked whiskey. Yeah, mesquite smoked whiskey. It's hard to say. And now the last whiskey that I'd say really got her onto bourbon, and at this point, this would have been what, 2020? No, 2019? I don't remember. So 2021, this was easy to find still at this point. And we happened to go somewhere and we got to enjoy a lot.
Finished like a whole bottle in a single weekend. But not just us. There were other people.
There was about
calm down.
5 of us.
Yeah,
and
it's much more respectable.
Also, it wasn't actually a full bottle. It was probably about right here.
Yeah, it's
a little lower. Doesn't make it much better. But we were on vacation down in Gulf Shores, Alabama. We had already had this once. I really enjoyed it. I'm like, oh, this is nice, sweet. It's a good flavor and you can just kind of sip on it. But this was, and still is, one of our all-time favorite whiskeys. But at that point, this was only, still is only like $40 in MSRP, if you can find it. Obviously, a lot of places are selling this for $100 or more than that, which is just absolutely ridiculous to me. However, this was the big one for both of us.
I think this is the first time I really drank a whiskey that was just straight.
If you're trying to find a good whiskey as your entry whiskey, don't be afraid just to try things. If you're going to start with Jack, start with Jack. If you're going to start with Buffalo Trace, start with Buffalo Trace. If you're going to start with Jim Beam White Label, Jim Beam Black Label, whatever it may be, just use that as your starting point. It is totally fine to be like, okay, I'm going to start here. Let's just try this. It's a cheap bottle. I can buy it and we can see if I like it. Don't feel like you have to go out and find something cool or something expensive and spend all this money on it, because there are a lot of whiskeys that are really expensive that really aren't that great. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you'd like to like, comment, subscribe, I'd appreciate it. She'd appreciate it. But I hope you guys have a good rest of your week. Happy Monday. Cheers.
Bye.